Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cast Dice, the podcast that explores the great big wild world of tabletop gaming that exists today. It has been said many times on this podcast, and apparently in other places now, that we're in the middle of a gaming renaissance. There are just too many good games that we could be playing, that we could be spending our hobby time or our hobby dollars on. It can lead to a serious case of fear of missing out, as the kids call it. Now, often when we have people on the show, it's to talk about the games that they have been playing and they have been enjoying. And our guest tonight is absolutely going to do that. Now, we also talk about big industry events. We're going to do that. And we talk to people who write and produce games. And we're going to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight on Cast Dice, we are hitting the trifecta. And if we're going to do that, we better do it with a big guest. Now, this is a man who, if you are at all into, vaguely historical / fun war games, tabletop games, if you have been around Games Workshop, the Traps there, if you've been around the Traps Warlord games, if you know anything about Footsore Miniatures, of course, you will know this man's name. He's all over Facebook, it seems, in a million different groups. He's a phenomenally creative human being, and I am dead pleased and proud to welcome Andy Hobday to Cast Dice. Welcome, man.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm being very British. I'm sat here blushing.
That is the funny thing, though, when you introduce the British guest and they go, sometimes those intros wrong foot people and you go, sorry, it's the American in me. Andy, how you doing, man?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, very good. Thank you for having me on.
Well, mate, we've been talking for years through various channels in different ways, but it's finally great to have you on an actual podcast. Now, of course, we did say that you sort of cut your teeth, so to speak, in Games Workshop, like many of us, me too, did. And you moved on through Warlord Games, and now you have Footsore Miniatures. Would you like to talk us through briefly, maybe a little bit through that journey? So maybe folks who aren't familiar with you sort of get an idea of your background.
Yeah, I'd love to. I came to gaming very early in life. I was very lucky that I had a friend who was very much into Dungeons and Dragons and all of that kind of thing back in the early 80s. So I had quite early exposure to that. But how I found it was really the fighting fantasy books and
Nice.
Also Warhammer Fantasy version 1 back in the day, which is a long time ago.
Wow, yeah, that's a couple years back.
It's a few years back, and it was an amalgamation of all those three things. I very much liked to play Dungeons and Dragons. I liked dwarves. I think that came very much from reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and ended up with this massive collection of dwarf miniatures for role playing. Didn't know what to do with it. Found Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Realized I'd had a dwarf army.
Nice.
Played Fantasy Battle through there, and then when it came time to get a job, there was Games Workshop had stores, and I found myself gravitating to working in a retail store. I think the first store I worked in was in Derby, which was when I was about 20, which is near Nottingham for those people who aren't from the UK.
Yes, I was going to say that is near Nottingham, right? Yeah.
It is, absolutely. So, and we're talking probably about 28 years ago. That was when I started.
Wow.
So it's quite a long time ago. So so that's really how I got into the industry. But it all kind of came from the background of playing the games and mostly role playing, if I'm being honest. And then painting figures. But yeah, that's how I really got into it. And just the fact that I could actually do it for a living back then was just something that just blew my mind, age 20. And it's really one of the things that we talk about these days is I try and I'm jumping around a bit, but I try and explain what we do with Footsore. You go to a party, someone says, "Oh, yep. What do you do for a living?" I say, "Oh, I make toy soldiers." They're like, "Oh, right," and can't get their head around it. And then you say, like Games Workshop, and they go, "Oh, Games Workshop."
Yeah.
And this day and age, it's pretty mainstream. But back then, you know,
right.
no one had any idea who they were. So yeah, that's how it came about. So I was at Workshop for 15 years, doing
Wow.
many different things. I
Mm-hmm.
worked all over the country in the UK, lots of stores. I was an area manager, training manager, ended up in IT, did IT, worked at Lenton, which was just like heaven. You know, seeing
Oh yeah.
you know, seeing the game, you know, going in for lunch and Rick Priestley walking in, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
Jervis Johnson, these guys who you've idolized, they were like rock stars to me.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, and being able to eat your lunch with them and talk about the rules and talk about games was just pretty magical.
Yeah.
Uh, and then about 10, 11 years ago, my time had come to an end.
Yep.
There was some changes, I think, around Games
Mm-hmm.
Workshop, which really didn't sit very comfortably with me. And I chose to leave at that point, had no idea what I was going to do, took some time out. And then after about a couple of years, I ended up working at Warlord.
That's right.
And there's a lot of people there from who I knew from Games Workshop. I was involved with Warlord Games very early on. When it started, I built their first website. Me and my partner, because I was doing a lot of web stuff at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved with John and Paul pretty early on,
Mm-hmm.
and after about a year or so, uh, they were kind enough to give me a job, and I was at Warlord for about 6 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say you
Doing,
were there a long time, and you did a lot of jobs.
I did, yeah. I mean, my my day-to-day job was the website and direct sales and all of that. But I just got involved in everything that I could get involved with. But it was quite a new company and it was a lot of fun, you know. And having Rick there
Mm-hmm.
was just great, you know, having access to Rick and being able to talk to him about things like Antares as it came through, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to be involved in Antares with him, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. I still just uh, I'm just going to segue 2 seconds, but I still remember the first day I was working in the office, and Jeremy Vitok of the US
Mm.
studio walked by and tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Hey, we're going out for dinner tonight. You're coming," something along those lines. And I was like, "All right, cool. You know, I'm a young guy. I'll do that."
Yeah,
And it was a bunch of people, maybe 8 people, but one of them was Rick, and Rick sort of sat at the head of the table, and I was like,
yeah.
was like, "Oh my God, that's Rick. That's Rick Priestley," and everyone, yeah, I know. That's why we invited you. We thought you'd enjoy, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And he was, and I think Dan, our large Indian friend, looked at me and was like, "Don't embarrass yourself. Stay calm. It's good. Just breathe. You'll be fine." And I was like, "Oh, Rick, and I think for the first time in my life, up to that point and since, I didn't say anything. I just sat and ate the curry and had a wonderful night. And but all of those guys are
Mm.
so laid back and down to earth, and you can learn so much from them just listening to the experiences they've had. And you've worked around people like that for what, 21 years in those companies, and then that helped
Mm.
set you up for your own.
Yeah, very lucky, you know. And I think at the time you don't realize. I mean, if you
Mm.
throw into that mix, excuse me, people like the Perrys, you
Oh yeah.
know, the Perry twins were at Games Workshop at the time, you know, and you have access to all these people, and they were so accommodating and they were so open. You know, Jez
Mm-hmm.
Goodwin. I used to go drinking with Jez Goodwin, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And you think back, they were like your mates.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it just shows how, as an entity, Games Workshop has really grown and moved on. But it was, they say golden years for the games, etc. I also think
Mm-hmm.
it was golden years for the people who were there.
Amen.
It's it's a bit like, I listened to the Stones and Zeppelin
Mm-hmm.
and the Doors. I wasn't alive,
Yeah.
when they were in their heyday, but it's being able to be with that, in that kind of period of gaming. It was I think I didn't really appreciate it, if I'm being honest, at the time. But
Yeah.
looking back, you absorb a lot of it in. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think I learned a lot by osmosis, and also from Games Workshop as well. It gets a bad press for different things. It gets a good
Mm-hmm.
press for certain things, but, it gives you a good grounding. No one else has, 'cause, 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 'c retail stores that you can go into and learn to play the games or talk about the games. That's a big deal, I think. And I know we're all moving online, and everything is moving that way, and you can build a virtual community, but still having somewhere to go and play is such a big deal, I think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Games Workshop's responsible, and I was sitting down with an old friend who also worked for Games Workshop on the weekend, and we were talking about how Games Workshop really has sort of turned, at the intro of this podcast, I talk about there being a gaming renaissance. Now, we are not in the golden age of gaming. That is for darn sure. We are in the cutting edge of there are just games coming out of everywhere. But how many of the people who are writing those games, developing those games, have experience because they worked for Workshop? Countless people. I mean, Warlord Games alone spawned from Games Workshop. And you did. Footsore did. If I'm being perfectly honest, I was always a bit of a talker, but it wasn't until I worked for Games Workshop in their sales department that I was literally, probably beaten into shape into the being that I am today by John Matthews. If that hadn't happened, and to a degree, John Stollard, if that hadn't happened, this podcast wouldn't be happening right now. And so, I mean, so many aspects of gaming have come from that root, and just how many people have gone through those doors. It's really helped shape the gaming world that we are in today.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree more. And it's exactly that. Games Workshop has its fingerprint on lots of things.
It does.
For
better, for worse sometimes. But really, and everything that they're just... It's why I try not to be negative, I try not to have people on the show who talk negatively about Games Workshop. Now, I may not play a lot of their games now, but without them, where would we be?
I totally agree. And at the end of the day, they are a corporate entity.
They are.
That's what they are. And sometimes within the gaming industry, people still see it as a cottage industry. And there's a lot of that around too, So I think people should, it's horses for courses. You know what you're going to get with Games Workshop. You know that they're going to make fabulous figures, great games, great background. I would argue, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan like you, Brad. Yeah, I would say that the 40K universe is as big as the Star Wars universe. They have all of that stuff and that IP. So that is what you get. To then go and have a couple of cheap shots at them, or say they're overpriced, or they are what they are.
Exactly.
You know what they are. So park that. That's great. I look at some of the miniatures they're releasing now. Beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful figures. And again, what they're doing is they're cutting the envelope again. They're showing people what can be done.
And that, it's great.
That will pass through.
It is. It will, and it will be great to see another 10 years down the line what those people have left and gone and done, or have done through the company. And it's nice to see, given that literally 3 or 4 years ago, people were talking about Games Workshop disappearing. And of course now we can laugh about that, but the turnaround has been massive. Not to say that it would have disappeared completely, but there was talk of it being purchased, and all sorts of weird, I'm sure tin hats were involved with some of those theories, but now it is truly hit its stride again, and it's killing it. And when I say killing it, I don't mean it's killing the gaming industry. Quite the opposite. No. It is so prolific with game production and model production, and it's a machine, and it's great.
I agree.
Yeah,
I subscribe to the theory that if Games Workshop is doing well, we all do well. It lifts the industry up, and if you're in this gaming industry, that is the zeitgeist that you should ride. If you want to see what I'm not saying copy what they do or any of that. Their background, their miniatures, but they are always evolving and changing and developing. So if you're serious about it, you should always keep one eye on what they're doing. That's my opinion. But on the flip side of that, there is the smaller industries, the cottage industries, and all of that too, and that is out there, and I love that about our hobby.
Yes.
I love the fact that what Games Workshop has enabled us, it's enabled quality miniature. Anybody can make quality miniatures now.
That's right.
And it's anybody with an imagination, or the people are there, that they can go out and they can find those people, and they can bring their projects and their dreams together, and release it through Kickstarter or through some other means, and do that. That was never available back in the day.
Oh God, no.
So it's all there. I think people should just use it. I'm sure people are going to hunt me out and kill me now, but I think they should change that negative energy about everything into, oh God, I sound like hippie, into positive energy, and go and find what they want from the hobby.
Here.
Because it's there.
Yeah, man.
That's what I believe.
Amen. Well, I'm glad you brought up the cottage industry, and I'm not trying to disparage your endeavors by saying that, but compared to Games Workshop, everyone's a smaller company. Let's talk about Footsore, because we've talked about your time at Games Workshop. We've talked about your time at Warlord, but you've started up your own company, and pretty quickly you have a pretty diverse portfolio yourself. So let's talk about Footsore. How did that come into being? And I mean, you're the face of the company these days, really, online. Whenever I see anyone posting, especially about the UK, I know that there's been, a Footsore US sort of springing up of late. But talk to us about Footsore, man. It's a really fascinating time. You guys have just started your own podcast. You've got all sorts of great games going on. Talk to us, man.
Yeah, of course. Footsore evolved from Musketeer Miniatures, which was Bill Thornhill. Bill's gonna be cross. I've got his name then. It all came out of Bill Thornhill. He's a fabulous sculptor, and he made this range of miniatures. And after a while, he partnered with a chap called Don Hauser, and they created Footsore Miniatures, and that traded for a couple of years as it was. Bill was looking for someone in the UK to get involved. So myself and my partner, Mark Farr, who he's another ex-Games Workshop person who I've known for over 20 years. We agreed to buy in. We bought in and we took over the UK side of the business. And by doing that, it gave us access to manufacturing. It gave us access to Bill's initial range of miniatures. And then a couple of years ago, we looked at it all and decided what we wanted to do. I mean, the driver for me was, I love the Dark Ages. I'm a big fan, and a lot of Footsore was all based in the Dark Ages. So it was an easy, great looking miniatures, set in a period that I like. We had the capacity to manufacture it all. It was all like win-win-win for us. But one of the things that I have learned in my time is that you need games to sell miniatures.
You do.
In any number that is going to sustain a business to be able to grow and offer more and more to your customers. That's right. The first thing we did, we looked at it and we said, let's make some games. So that's really where we are. It was Footsore Miniatures. We've added and games on the end, and since then we've released Gangs of Rome, which is a kind of gang fighting game in Rome, hence the title. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, right on the tin.
And we've also released Mortal Gods this year, which is it was primarily a skirmish game based in ancient Greece, but the idea has always been for it to grow and probably fill from the Bronze Age back with the Egyptians all the way to the fall of the West. So that system will cover all of that. So really, that's what we're focusing on. Funny enough, though, the first project I wanted to do, I'd done Samurai already with Graham, Davey, and Test of Honor. That's right. But the first project I really wanted to do was the Barons' War, which was medieval, set in the 13th century, really in the UK. So, and the beauty of the miniatures are you could use them for across that period. But it was a period I was really interested in. So we actually started doing the Barons' War 2 years ago. Got Paul Hicks on board and we made a few miniatures, but we got distracted by Gangs of Rome.
Yeah,
so
Mortal Gods, it looked like, by just how popular that game's been, at least locally. A lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, it's great imagery. I like the idea. It's like with the samurai. I think this is my take on gaming. Like with the Samurai Warrior, I think the Samurai Warrior is very iconic as a fighter in that period. You know, the Greek hoplite, very iconic. You know, so taking that and placing that into a game was very, very rewarding to do. My challenge with the whole hoplite thing is the way that they used to fight was they'd rank up in massive numbers, this phalanx, and they'd march across the table at each other, have a bit of a pushing fight, then one side would break and the others would chase them down for a bit, and then they'd go home and have their tea. And it, you know, it's a very stylized form of warfare, and it looks great on the board, but again, that's not really my thing. So we looked at a way that we could incorporate hoplites into a game that we wouldn't have to paint up 100, 200 hoplites, but also it was kind of historically accurate. And we found this idea. They had this thing called a Lokos, which was an ambushing party. And we based the game around that. It allowed us to mix in lots of different troop types, you know, have anything from 10, 15 to 30 models, and off we went.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really love about Mortal Gods. It's one of those games where you don't have to pick up. It's got depth to it, but you don't have to buy a million models to play it. A lot of historical games, you often need huge numbers of models to fill out an entire battlefield. But with that, I mean, in some cases, you can use models you already have. In other cases, you know, you can paint up a few more, but, you know, you can crank out 15, 20 models in a weekend. Most people can. And then, bam, you're ready to go. It's a great scale. And, you know, it leads to fast, fun, furious games.
That's it. And you can dip your toe in that period. So, you know, if you find out that you enjoy painting hoplites, you know, go and knock yourself out, go and paint 100. You know, and then go and find another game to play with them. You know, we're pretty cool about that and laid back. We're not very, you can only play our games. You know, here's an introduction to the period at that time. If you like it, you know, there's plenty of other games out there to try.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, it's all good. But going back to what you said, that you've hit the nail on the head for me. Fast, furious, and fun. You know, that's probably carried over from Games Workshop as well.
I was thinking that just then. Yeah. When I said that, when that left my mouth, I went, oh my God, that's a Games Workshop saying. I can't believe I just said that.
But it's true, though. I mean, this day and age, people's attention spans are very small, aren't they? So if you can provide a game which has some real depth to it, as in, you know, in the creation of your force, and it's not the same all the time, but talk to your friends about it over on social media or however else you communicate, but then have a game in an hour or in an hour and a half. How great is that? We are so time poor these days. So by providing a game that is quite easy to set up, play, done, and enjoyable, you know, that's what it's got to be about at the moment, I think.
Agreed. And I think that's what a lot of smaller game companies and even some of the bigger game companies are figuring out with a lot of the games that are coming out now is we're seeing games that are easy to pick up. Like they have easy start rules. You can put them on the tabletop. You can play with your friends. They have smaller size boards, less terrain, less models, shorter games. So you can, for those of us who are time poor, you can get in and get out and play your games. Or play an entire campaign in a day or a weekend if you have that time with your friends. But it's also got that crunch and that depth that keeps you coming back. I think that's where gaming really is going. And I think you are slotting into that wheelhouse beautifully.
Yeah, that's the plan. You know, that's where we like to be. And, you know, and there's so many, so much more we can add, you know, to give it that depth, but which wouldn't affect the gameplay. But one of the things we have found is that with the system that we've created for Mortal Gods, it spawned out of Test of Honor, so there is some similarities there, but it has forked. You know, the dice look similar, but the dice mechanics are very different. By using things like the phalanx within Mortal Gods, all of a sudden you can start ranking units up. So it's like, oh, okay, I can play this game with a lot more miniatures or on a larger scale if I want to. So I believe we've got a system that you can play with 10 models, so a true skirmish. People, a lot of people think that's a real skirmish game. 15, 20, 30 models, it isn't really skirmish.
No.
And still enjoy it with 10 models on the table. Or I think you could scale up to 50, 60, 70, maybe 100 miniatures to play. And the only difference between playing those different types of games is time.
Yeah. Amen
so
to that.
then you're selling a game into people, and I don't mean financially, but as in buying into the game to play based on how much time they have. But if you can offer, all variants of that, then it's got to work, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's got the legs then, doesn't it? I mean, you can play it any which way, and it, as you say, it's got that it's got that depth that that'll keep people coming back to play it different ways and to play more.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, let's talk a little bit about Mortal Gods. Now, you did say it is based in the ancient world, and you did say it's about 15 to 20 models per side. I know that you have the core box, but you also have additional Spartan, Athenian, Persian, and other assorted ancient Greek forces. Is that am I Thracians and help me out here, because the ancient the names of ancient races aren't my strong point.
Yeah, what we've done is we brought the box set itself covers what I would say is a mercenary or a cookie cutter Greek force. So if you just bought the box, you could play Athenians, Spartans, Thracians, Thebans, Thespians, Ionians, all the rest of them, and it's a painting solution.
Right.
So you would get those out. There's enough for 2 decent size forces in there, warbands, and then you can color those there's gifts, because in the game, instead of having skills, you have gifts from the god, and you award those to you buy them as part of your building, process of building your force, and you can then give some flavor and color to your warband, your low cost, and here's my Theban low cost using the basic mercenary cards. Great, job done. And you can play that and be very happy. There's a lot of depth to that. What else we've brought out, as you said, is we've got an Athenian box set and a Spartan box set as well. Yeah. In there's some specific Spartan Athenian miniatures. There's a set of Spartan cards and Athenian cards in each of those, and there's a 16-page mini rule book in there giving an overview of their part in the classical period, because it's set after the Peloponnesian War, and they've split into 2 leagues. So they're both the big guys, and most of the people align themselves under those 2 groups. So if I buy the Spartan one, you'll have all the Spartan rules, trained from birth, they don't run, they prefer to take damage, and it gives you some real color to them there. You get Helots, you get Crypteia, et cetera, and to balance that with the Athenians, they were very much a naval force as well. So there's Athenian Navy in there. You got the Marines, and all of a sudden it gives you more flavor. And when it comes to building your army, the only rule is you can't mix Athenian and Spartan cards. That's all. And to make that very easy, we've color coded it because I'm a bit simple. Athenians are blue, thanks to Hollywood. Spartans are red, thanks to history. And then after that, we're just about to release a Persian deck. They'll be sent out this week, which is the start of the Persian Empire. The good thing about the Persians are they envelop so many different people that over time it's going to become a very colorful force. At the moment, it's got the core Persians. Obviously, it's got the Immortals in there. You've got to have the Mortals. It's got their Bara troops with their big shields. It's got more horsemen because the nobles were raised from birth to ride horses and shoot bows. We've got some Egyptian Marines in there. So that's going to give, again, it's got a chariot as well. The Persians have got quite a tasty chariot, which if you can actually get it lined up, can cause a lot of damage in the game. It goes through and chews loads of people up. that's your three choices. But then again, the Persians will fight with the Spartans, the Persians will fight with the Athenians, etc. And then you're right, Thracians are coming this month, and then we'll do Thebans because obviously we're Hercules, and Spartacus, of course, is all that background. We got the Thespians coming, and we'll just keep adding and adding. Then you can just start navigating around the coast. So you've got your Etruscans, the early Italians, you got the Iberians, and then it starts to grow and grow and grow, and we'll just keep adding them as we go.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through your website. I did take a lot of photos of different pages, but weirdly not of the text. Although I did do some of those in some of the research for this. I often work off of photos for notes, but I have countless pictures of the models themselves. What you have done, and I know that you again learned from, I think, Test of Honor, where you had some good basic troop models, but then you put out some absolutely fantastic conversion kits and, more to the point, heroes that really bulk out those forces and some special units that you add in, and all of a sudden, man, just the number of absolutely sensational models you guys make for this game. And this is not necessarily, to be perfectly honest, like my scene, but my God, you have me, ooh, maybe I should go buy some of these because the models are so damn good. I really have to take my hat off because just the character of the models, you really do get a feeling of who they are, and there's just some awesome hobby opportunities going on in the models you guys already produce, and it makes me wonder what's coming next. It's cool.
Oh, that's really kind. We with those models, we have a Greek sculptor as well. He's a guy called Stavros Zouliates, and when you say to Stavros, "I need some Thespians," you don't have to explain it to him. It's his culture. So I think he was the right man to capture all of that. He understands what an Athenian helmet looks like. He understands the Spartans, the way they should be. You ask him to make a trophion, which is the cross piece with it was like a trophy. That's where we get the word trophy from. A battlefield trophy. You just say, "Can you make me a trophion?" He comes back with it. I don't even have to send him any pictures. And that has really, really helped us out. He's a wonderful sculptor and a great chap to work with. So it's been a real pleasure on that project, and we've got lots more to come. He's working on Thracians at the moment. He's doing mounted Persians. He's also doing some bits for Mythic at the moment. So there's lots more to come. Lots more to come.
Nice. Now, you did mention the Barons' War a minute ago, and we sort of tangented. We sidestepped very heavily into Mortal Gods, and I know there's a lot coming up, and I'm glad you touched on that. But you also, getting back into Barons' War, talking about iconic Crusaders. Getting into knights in shining armor, as they were called when I was a kid. For those of us who had Britons, the toys as a kid, and fighting those battles on the castle ramparts. Man, you're going to do it again with another one. Now this is something I'm definitely going to be staring hard and long at. So you have a Kickstarter coming for this. Talk to us a little bit about Barons' War, because this looks awesome.
I'm glad it does. That's wow. Yes. How I got to here is as people who know me, I love samurai. When I was younger, I played a game called, there was two. It was a game called Samurai Blades by Standard Hill Games, and there's Cry Havoc. And I don't think I was even a teenager at the time, but they really shaped me. They're the games that really got me pumped at the time. And I've done Samurai with Test of Honor, with developed that with Graham. It's great. But Barons' War was the thing that I really, really wanted to do. And as we mentioned before, it was the first project I went to when we set up Footsore. We went in there, but we kept putting it on the back burner. It's gone on the back burner. It's gone on the back burner. And then the other day, I mentioned to Mark, I said, "When can we do the Barons' War?" And he said, "Look, mate, we're totally full now till 2021." on releases. So I was like, oh, I got really I threw a strop about it.
Yeah.
Had my bottom lip out and everything. I said, oh, it's all I want to do.
Yeah.
So I stormed off in the way that I do, and I said, right, I'm doing it myself. So that's how we got to the Barons War. This is why it is as it is. We're going to run a Kickstarter, and not Footsore. I'm actually running a Kickstarter on this. I'm
okay.
Yeah, I'm old chums with Paul Hicks. So I said to Paul, come on, mate, help me out on this, and he agreed to come on board. So Paul and I are actually creating the Barons War as a way to show that I think, we need some really, really nice miniatures in this period that can, can be the Barons War. It could be Crusades as well. The second, third Crusades were going on, around this time as well.
That's right.
So initially what we're going to do with this Kickstarter is just make 40 beautiful miniatures. So the characters will be characters from the Barons War. There'll be a chap called William Marshall, who is so not known. It pains me that people don't even know who he is. If you're listening to this and you don't know who William Marshall is, the first Earl of Pembroke, go and read about him. This man was like a legend in his own lifetime. He supported 5 kings. He was the truest knight. He stood behind a throne. He didn't always agree with it at the time. He was a jousting hero. He was like David Beckham of his time. They all wanted him on his jousting team. And he nearly killed Richard Lionheart in a joust. Richard begged him not to skewer him, so he skewered his horse instead. He disarmed him and nearly skewered him. This guy's a legend. And we don't even learn about him anymore at school. I find it really, really odd, that one. So as you can tell, I'm a bit of a fanboy of his.
Yes. Just a little bit.
He's going to be the focus of this Kickstarter. So he will be in there. And what we've done is we're going to release knights, bowmen, spearmen. We're going to do some other characters. There's some other bits and pieces around that. So it will give you a great range to dive into to start with. So that's the idea behind it.
Now, what I like about this Kickstarter, besides everything you just said, which I absolutely love the sound of, is it's sort of kicking off in a unique way. Unlike some Kickstarters where there's a massive buy-in, what I really like about what you're doing is you're starting with just get a £1 get on board, because that's how Kickstarter works. You need to get in somehow. So you put the £1 in, but then you buy the packs of infantry and other models that you want, and only those. And they will be cheaper than what they'll be retailed for later. So what you're getting is an opportunity to sort of get in before they go, mainstream, get them cheaper. But you get to cherry pick what models you want down to, packs. But that you're not having to buy an entire model range. If you only want the mounted knights, you can get just the mounted knights. If you only want certain foot models, you can get those certain foot models. It's a great business model. I think it's a great idea.
I'm glad you see that, and that's absolutely right. I'm trying to use Kickstarter for what it really is for. And I'm not saying I'm the only one, and loads of people out there do it too. I've funded it personally up to here, so we have all of the masters made for the miniatures. Paul has sculpted them all, and we're sat on them. We're ready to go. But what I can't afford to do is produce them.
Right.
So the idea with the Kickstarter is to prove A, that there is a market for it, and B, to help me, because Footsore will produce them. They're going to manufacture and ship them out. Nice. But I'm going to have to pay them to do that. So we haven't got budget to do it, really. That's why it's happening as it is. So by just doing it that way as well, you've got a company that does deliver, backing us up. We have the figures all ready to go. I'm looking for commitment from the masses, really, to help me out. And it really, I can't stress how much this is a real passion project for me. And I really want to release a game. I really want to do even more miniatures. But it's that thing when you're spread quite thin as we are,
Mm-hmm.
you need help. You need help to bring it into reality.
But it's funny. I mean, all it takes sometimes is someone to throw down the flag and say, "I really like this thing," and then all of a sudden, in this digital age, people can rally around that flag, so to speak, and all of a sudden, you have a community. And in your case, as you say, and unlike a lot of Kickstarters who give you a few green stuff models and say, "Well, we're going to make the rest." Yours are made. They're done. They're ready.
Yes.
The masters are set. It's and unlike some Kickstarters who said, well, we have to figure out manufacturing later down the track, you have got an established production line ready to go. You just need to know how many to make. And that's, I mean, man, this stinks of wind to me, because you've got all the common Kickstarter follies you've already accounted for. So that is fantastic, man.
And if it funds, I will write the rules. I will finish the rules off. So I've already written big chunks of them. If there's a desire for it, bang, it's out there. It'll be done. And the rules won't just cover the Barons' War. They'll cover from the Anarchy in the UK, Anarchy in the UK. There you go.
There you go. Hey,
if you're old enough, yeah.
Yeah, Sex Pistols are certainly involved. Yep. Sorry.
So the end of the 11th century, all the way up to Robert the Bruce. That's what we'll cover. So. Nice. That's the rules I'm proposing to go with it, and we'll make miniatures. I've already spoken to Matt Bickley, who would like to do some, and Paul's all over this. We got plenty more to do.
Well, he's a great sculptor too, and that is the other big one, is that not only are the models made, they're made by someone who knows what they're doing. So no Play-Doh faces here. This is right. This is the real deal. Now you did say. I guess that was off air, but another thing that sort of makes this interesting is you're not going for the big month-long Kickstarter campaign. You're going short and sharp. So it is September the 15th through the 29th. So you have 2 weeks to get in.
Yeah.
Nice.
2 weeks. And let's keep it focused. I think at the end of the day, you're either in or you're not, aren't you? Let's do that. And what we do have though is in the style of a Kickstarter, we do have some stretch goals. So, but it will all be based on how much we raise. So
dare I ask? Are we allowed to ask what some of those may be? Maybe a couple of the lower tier ones, or are we keeping that under the curtain, so to speak?
Well, we've definitely got some of the characters from the time, and Paul sent me a figure the other day. It just knocked my socks off. It was absolutely beautiful. So that will have to be funded. I can't tell you who he is because it will ruin the surprise, and people will start to think about who he is. But obviously, we will have William Marshall in there somewhere. We've got to, because he's pretty iconic, and we will have the other major protagonists. So we will definitely have a figure to represent both sides of the argument.
That's awesome. Oh, I can't wait to see how it goes, man. Good luck. Good luck. That is fantastic news. Well, cool, man. Now, we've talked about the Barons' War, and we've talked about Mortal Gods. Now, there are a ton of other games that you guys manufacture, put out. Do you want to mention just some of the things that people can find at Footsore Miniatures?
Yeah, we got Gangs of Rome, which is a gang fighting game in Rome.
Of course,
it was the first game. What it says on the tin is what it is.
So hold on, let's not go past that. Really quick, I'm going to jump back a sec, and I was talking with the author of Reality's Edge, the new cyberpunk game that's coming out, and he was so taken by the gang mechanic, as in the crowds. The mob in the street mechanic, that he's not taken it, but it inspired him to put something like that in his game. And it was truly an original concept where you have, not only do you have these, gangs of hooligans battling on the streets of Rome. Again, back to the title of the game. You have the actual pedestrians. So many times when you play these games, it's like the streets are deserted. There are no actual civilians involved. Whereas if you were to go outside in real life, there's randoms walking around constantly. Yours is a game that actually has great mechanics for that, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, funny enough, you hit the nail exactly on the head. When we started playing, Rome felt very empty. So, Rome is the mob, isn't it? And the mob is Rome, and that's how it always is. So we really needed to include the mob. So we thought about how we could do it, and they became actually moving bits of scenery. So they would react based on what you do near them. So up until you actually fight someone, they just treat you like a normal citizen of Rome. As soon as you kick off or something happens near them, they'll react. So they could either run away, stand still and watch, or they could attack. So that really is how we included them in. Also, what else they could actually do was you could actually run and hide in them and get lost in the mob and then come out in a different mob stand somewhere else. So like reappear. So all of a sudden they really gave life to the city.
Oh, that's so cool. I love. I mean that mechanic is fantastic, and it really gives the game its life. Again, it's a game full of incredible personality models. It seems like every single model that you guys sell for that game, I mean, has its own literal personality. It is phenomenal. But then on top of that, you guys partnered with Sarissa. And there are so many buildings that you can put on a tabletop. It's astonishing. I mean, it really is amazing.
We were very, very lucky with Gangs of Rome, really. I know Steve Cumming, who runs Sarissa, because I love Sarissa buildings. We had formed a really strong relationship over Test of Honor, because Sarissa, we went to lots of people at the time, Graham and I, to see if we could get some buildings to play test with. And Sarissa were the only ones who supported us. Steve was like, well, how much do you want? And then he came back with a box of buildings, for Test of Honor. So from that time on, we've never forgotten that. And he was very supportive. So when we did Gangs of Rome, I just said, Steve, any chance you can do me a couple of Roman buildings? And he said, yeah, come back next week. And I went back the following week, and he'd actually built Rome. There was 20 different buildings on the table.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, wow, man, this is just amazing. And he said, yeah, that's just a start. We can do more. And he got really involved with us. Like when we did the box sets, they did some very specific. We had a bakery made, because obviously bread is the currency of Rome, to go in one of the box sets. And the one before, he'd made as a temple under construction. So he guys at Sarissa are great people to work with. And this is for anybody out there. If you're doing a game or you want some specific scenery, do contact them. They are always willing to help anybody. And the deal he did with us was just so, we didn't even pay for any of the design work, as long as they could sell it themselves.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, you scroll through, and I literally just went to your website, and I'm scrolling through, and it's
it's Rome.
You aren't kidding. It's Rome.
Yeah, they built Rome. It's beautiful. So we got them to work with, and we had a great team of people. We had a chap called Adam Dobbins who wrote a lot of the mechanics for the game. We play tested it. I fed in, but he did a lot for the game itself, and a lot of the things that he added. It wouldn't be the game that it is without Adam's input. So kudos to him for that.
Yeah, man, it is truly a fantastic. I mean, it's not like anything else. I mean, sure, there's lots of gang fighting games, but that crowd mechanic, the terrain, just the whole way the system works really does make it truly original. So I mean, hats off to you guys. You killed it with that one, and you still are. And yeah, it's fantastic. Again, I'm scrolling through here, and the basic rules are dirt cheap, and so it's one of those games you can pick up and start flipping through, and then I'm sure there's a rabbit hole you can fall down somewhere in there, but oof, yeah, very
yeah. It's really interesting you say that. We're gamers ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the guys at Footsore play. We play every week. So when we create games, we want them to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we try to price the games at that price. So, you know, some people like to collect rule books. It's you know, and we want the rules to be small. I think it's 36 pages maybe for Gangs of Rome. It's not much bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So either if you just want to buy the rules, read it, put it on a shelf, great. You know, here's a decent intro price for that. If you want to learn the game, buy the rules, read it. You can read it easily in an afternoon and get a good idea of how the game plays.
Mm-hmm.
So and then what it's doing is it's giving you options. So you can then say, well, I like this game. It's at a price I can make that mind up. I can give it a go. I know why we do these big box games of £100 or whatever, but sometimes I think it's a barrier to entry for a lot of people.
Yeah,
you have to be committed.
I could not agree more. And you know, sometimes you just want to try something out. And yeah.
So that's so in a roundabout way, that's what I'm trying to say is that's how we look at our pricing, and we do a box set for you to, like we have with Mortal Gods, like we have with Gangs of Rome, at a good price, so you can dip your toe in and away you go.
That's right. If you want to buy in and get in and, you know, have it all in one place, one-stop shop. But those aren't all. I mean, we've mentioned 3 games, and I mean, you do sell a lot of games that you don't make and additional models for some games that exist otherwise. I mean, I know Test of Honor is technically under another banner, but you guys sell that full line with some of your own models on top of that.
Yeah, we do. I had to do a range of samurai.
Mm-hmm.
It was always destined to be. So we've called our range a Warring Clan. I made it, commissioned it. I didn't sculpt it. They're by Stavros again. I had those made with Tests of Honor in mind. So they're packed in the same way that you would buy them for Test of Honor. Test of Honor is now with Graham Davey and his company, which is Grey for now.
Mm-hmm.
And he is writing, owning, creating for that. With, you know, a little input from me. He'll probably say very little input from me at the moment. But he's got some good guys helping him, you know, and we're helping him by manufacturing it through Footsore, producing it and distributing it for him. So, and there's a Test of Honor website as well you can go to.
That's
so
right.
there is testofhonor.com. So you can buy directly from Graham as well. So we do, you know, keep support the things that we like, you know, and that's what we do. We got Saga on there as well. Hold
on. Before we get to that, I want to ask you about one of your models. Now, don't jump off me too. You are a man who is very passionate about samurai and about martial arts. Now, Honda Yoshihito, the Kensai Master Swordsman. Tell us, that is a Footsore original. That model is that your favorite model in the range? Is there something we should talk about there, or is that just another awesome model in a range full of heroes?
Yeah, he's not an actual character, you know, and I think he was one done by Bill. Bill sculpted him, actually. The rest are done by Stavros, but that was one by Bill. But I wanted to give him some character, because I think also, you know, if you watch samurai films or you read any background, you know, these guys are living warriors. You know, the samurai slept with one eye open. You know, they'd go for a poo with their sword. You know, they didn't wash their hair, so they couldn't be snuck up on. So I think if you're going to make a characterable figure like this guy, Honda Yoshihito, you need to give him a name. You need to name him, and that's what we did. You know, we just gave him a name, and then it starts to create ideas in people's heads and how they would take him and play him in the game.
Yeah,
you know, so that's all really. I mean, Benki, who's a warrior monk, he's actually from history. He's a great character from history. Chobi, the big dude that Warlord made. I had to get Chobi, and Benjamin Chobi. He's one of my favourite characters of all time from Samurai. If you don't know who he is, go and look him up. He was a street tough who He was like the Japanese version of Robin Hood.
Mm-hmm.
So he defended the people on the street against a local lord's evil samurai who used to come and, rob from them or bully them or whatever. But Chobi was always there to protect them, and he was so good, such a good swordsman, they couldn't beat him. So in the end, how they did it, the local lord invited him for dinner, and it would be very dishonorable not to accept that invite.
Mm-hmm.
So Chobi goes to the guy's castle. He's in there. He's obviously armed. They can't take his sword off him because he's a samurai.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the customs that they do is that you bathe before you're taken in front of the Lord. So Chobi's in the bathhouse and they attack him while he's not got his sword, and they still can't kill him. He's so tough. And there's a great block painting of Chobi where he's there. He's got a sword through his leg. He's covered in bloody handprints. He stopped to have a drink of water from his from a pail while they're there, and then the way that they finished him off is they set fire to the bathhouse, which is like how disrespectful. So
now, I've seen that print countless times, but I didn't realize that's how they actually eventually killed him.
Yeah, they set fire to the bathhouse, and Chobi, being stoic, stayed in there. He couldn't get out. So yeah. It's such a sad story, but very, very noble story, and that kind of encapsulates a lot of samurai for me.
Nice. All right. Well, sorry, you were in the middle of talking about something else, and I dragged you back to samurai.
Okay.
But
no, I don't mind at all.
Go ahead. Saga.
Yeah, we sell Saga. We love Saga. It's as simple as that. It's again, like we were saying, Footsore Miniatures is a Dark Age company initially, and for me, it's probably the best Dark Age skirmish game out there to play. Mark and I played it quite a bit, and so we stock it and we sell it. But one thing I would like to do is my own Dark Age game. So we have all the miniatures. It'd be very remiss of Footsore not to have its own Dark Age game.
That's right. Nice. So, well, I look forward to seeing that. Is there a glint in somebody's eye in that, or is that just sort of down the track?
We're already playtesting it.
That's why I asked. You're a man of 1,000. There's 1,000 things going on, so I was kind of had that suspicion. But
yeah,
nice. All right. Well, what else can we look for under Footsore?
We are the big thing for me is we're working with a chap called John Wigley. He's a illustrator stroke artist, X Games Workshop, and if you're familiar with the name, the biggest project he worked on for Games Workshop was Mordheim.
Oh yes.
So a lot of the drawings and the illustrations in Mordheim come from John.
Those were so good.
Oh, they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Again, he's a good friend of mine, and it's great. We talked about what I'd done in the past, a lot of these connections that you've made through time. And John's been drawing for us now for about a year. So we have a big project coming next year, which we're very, very, very excited about. It's going to be our own IP, and
nice.
It's going to be something very different to what we've done so far. So
I'm loving this. I'm loving this. I want to know what it is, but yeah, the tease.
We're starting to tease some images. You mentioned our podcast. John did the two illustration of the two characters on there. They give you a feel of where it's going. They're kind of in tune with the other art that he's been drawing for us, the other illustrations and characters. So if you've seen our very early podcast logo with the two characters on,
I have. And man, do they look grim in a very cool way. Spoilers, if you look at the picture, and if you are wanting to see this picture, if you go to the Footsore Vox official podcast, Footsore Miniatures and Games podcast page, it is the art. It is the picture of the page at the top of the page. You can't miss it. Yeah, that's a big old hint, and I'm not gonna say anything else. Andy, did you want to give any other hints, or are we just gonna leave that one there?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's very dark.
Oh, yeah. It looks extraordinarily dark.
Yeah.
I'm not even, I can't, guys, I can't even begin to describe this photo
What?
without giving things away. So you got to go look it up.
Yeah. What will happen is we'll reveal more. We're not far away from releasing Mortal Gods Mythic, so we're really focused on that at the moment. Uh, once that's out, we've played, etc., we'll start to talk about this other project. But we hope, fingers crossed, it's going to be our big project for next year.
Nice. Now tell us about Mythic, because you have not mentioned this yet.
Yeah, one of the things we did when we released Mortal Gods, or one of the things that we were asked was, when are you going to introduce all of the characters, all of the creatures, etc. And it's only right that we do that. So it's going to be an add-on supplement to it. We have many of the monsters already made. So we have a Cyclops, we have a Hydra, we have Medusa and her sisters, we have Cerberus on the way, we have a number of centaurs have been made.
Harpies?
We get harpies have been done. Yeah, we got some skeletons done. Of course, you have to have skeletons, of course. With some fallen heroes, which look amazing. We got priests of Hades, a priest of Hera, priestess of Hera, priest of Zeus. And what you'll be able to do is take all of these creatures, create a warband, a low cost of your choice, and it will just slot straight into Mortal Gods.
That's cool.
So all of a sudden you can fight mythical creatures versus mythical creatures, or we balanced it in such a way that you can fight ordinary low cost against mythical creatures, or you can get a hero in. We've got Jason and his Argonauts in there.
I was going to ask. You said skeletons.
So you can fight the skeletons, you can fight the Hydra with him. So and we've been playtesting this now for about the last 6 months, and it's nearly ready to go. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, this is going to be our big release for Christmas.
Now, does that Cyclops look anything like something I may have seen in a classic movie at one point, perhaps?
It does. We've been very inspired by Harryhausen, but it's very much an inspiration from there. So we've gone for that look because I feel that really fits in with what people's psyche when they think of it all. But we've not copied. We've just been inspired by, and you'll see that when you see the creatures.
I think what you just heard, ladies and gentlemen, was the switch in my head go click, and yeah, you're a bad man, because now I'm going to end up buying a lot of creatures at Christmas time.
Yep. Well, we fingers crossed they'll be transposable as well. So you'll be able to use them in other things. That's always the plan.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. Andy, I think we need to stop talking soon, or I'm going to end up buying everything in your store. But please do talk to us a little bit more about the podcast, because clearly we are on a podcast, and I know a lot of people who listen to the show do enjoy listening to podcasts when they're painting or when they're commuting, or weirdly when they're working. I get a lot of that. I don't know. My job, I can't do that. So but if you're listening at work right now, I'm jealous. So Andy, tell us more about, if they want to hear more about your games, where can they hear more about that?
Yeah, you've already given the home of it. We're on Facebook, and let me rewind. It's very much early days. We've done one so far, and the reason behind why we've done it is people have asked us to do it. They want to be able to listen to what we're doing. They want to find out what's behind our thought process. They want to ask us questions that we will answer on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to do short, sharp, 30-minute, maybe an hour at the tops podcasts, which will all be there, and people will be able to go on there and say, oh, there's 10 questions about Mortal Gods. Let me just listen to that. Here's a bit about their thinking behind why they're doing Baron's War. Here's the latest thing on, are they ever going to finish the campaign rules for Gangs of Rome. Here you go. Here's a podcast on that. And it's very much that. It's for people who are liking what we're doing. They're behind our games. They want to know some more. They can go on and listen to them. We have set up a Facebook group for it, which is Footsore Vox. If you just go and search for that, everything will be in there. There's the opportunity to post your questions in there as well. So if you bang questions in there, we will answer them, and nothing is off the table. We're happy to talk about anything.
That's awesome. I love that you as a game company are reaching out to your community like that. And you're just, not only do you respond when people send you messages, clearly, because you and I have been conversing for a number of years, not only in the lead up to this, but the fact that you are reaching out to your community in that way, and the people who play your games, it's just, it's just.
Do you know what, Brad? I want to play games with all those people.
There you go.
That's what it's about for me. Obviously we need to sell the games to survive because we're a business. So and so we can make more things. But the bottom line is, I can't stress this enough. We're just gamers who are having the opportunity, and I'll be honest, the time of my life, being able to write games, release games, and make miniatures that I've always wanted to do. That 14-year-old, Andy Hobday, when he got his first dwarves or found these games, it's capturing that. I was still spellbound by it all. So being able to do that now is just, I can't say thank you enough to the people who buy our stuff. And I don't mean that in a cheesy way. If they didn't believe in what we're doing, they didn't play our games, they didn't like our miniatures, we wouldn't be here. So we have to respect those people.
Amen.
And answer their questions.
Well, that, I think, is the most perfect conclusion to a podcast. Congratulations, you landed that. That was brilliant. The only other thing that we need to, of course, say is to tell people where they can find you. Now, footsoreminiatures.co.uk is where they can find your version of the company. There is a U.S. variation. Is that right?
Yes, there is. It's footsorenorthamerica.com.
That's right. Through our old buddy Tim Skapowski. Oh my God. You get through an entire podcast without messing up someone's name, and then you mess up someone's name. Sorry, Tim. I feel bad now. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on today, Andy. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and it is super cool to hear about all the great stuff you guys are doing. As we've amply demonstrated in this podcast, you guys have a lot of irons in the fire, but I love how you keep coming back and you keep supporting the games that you're making. They're not just one shot done. You are giving people the games to play, and you keep them going, man. That's great. So thank you. My hat off to you, and for having the courage to get out there and with your mates start a company to put out these games that we can play and love. It's awesome, man. We need more people like you.
Oh, you're very kind, mate. Thank you very much for having me on.
Anytime, man. The chair's always open if you want to come back. Although it sounds like you have your own chair now and your own microphone. But Cast Dice always welcomes you, brother.
Oh, thank you. I'll be back.
Well, if you are listening to this, thank you for listening to the show. As always, it is appreciated. There have been a lot of people who have found us recently, have been listening to the shows and enjoying them and commenting and sending personal messages to me through the Facebook page with feedback and things they'd like the show to cover. As always, thank you. It is wonderful. Podcasting, though it's talking to other people, can be a weirdly solo endeavor at times. So for those who have reached out, it is greatly appreciated. If you would like to find the Facebook page associated with this podcast, please go to Facebook and search up Cast Dice, CASTDICE. And those eagle-eyed folks, if you haven't heard me mention it in the last couple episodes, here's one more. Cast Dice officially went to YouTube. Every episode of Cast Dice from episode 60 forward, and this is 69. Oh, God, this is 70. Oof. Time creeps up on you when you're not paying attention. Is now being put on YouTube as well. Weirdly, I was told so that people could listen to it at work, going back to what I was saying before, which, again, if you can listen to me at work, Awesome. Please listen to me more. But there will be other content added to that shortly. I do have a holiday coming up soon, and when that happens, I will be taking the time and the technology. The last of the gear is in the mail. We will be doing review videos. We will be doing gameplay videos of the games that we talk about on this podcast, and we'll see what other madness takes us where. But I think on that note, when you're playing the games that we know and love, to quote my good friend Casey Pittman, I hope your beverages are cold. I hope your dice roll hot. But more than anything else, we hope that you are having fun. Good night.